So good question kind of next maybe to move on to. If we were to sum it up, we've touched on a lot of different kind of parts of, let's say, the industry, from buy-to-let through to kind of short-term lets as well. But how would you kind of sum up the main kind of market and probably kind of where it's headed as well? Do you think short-term lets will be kind of a big part of the industry going forward? Do you think it'll always be kind of this niche element within it where you have the flexibility and the crossover potentially with buy-to-let, and buy-to-let will still be kind of the main part of the industry? What's your views in terms of how that might start to develop?
The sad bit is, I think that it'll get touted a lot when it's not applicable. It can be, it sounds a bit cynical. It could be used as a selling tool when it's not particularly there. I believe the actual market itself is just going to grow and grow. I just believe it's about finding the right places to do it and not necessarily following the herd and just saying, let's do it here, let's do it here.
Yeah.
I think it's like anything. The earlier you can get into something that's growing, the better.
Yeah.
And that's what our focus is. So we can stay two steps ahead. If we're moving into somewhere like Nottingham, where I've just decided to come into Manchester, then it's easy for us to show, well, there's far more potential there. I believe after COVID and with it, I just think the use of it will get more and more and more. I don't want to see anyone struggle, but I think a lot of, like we're saying, the low Airbnbs, a lot of the low hotels really, potentially could be struggling against this sort of market. But what won't happen is, because the vast majority of developments, so you've got residential developments, obviously, this is applicable too. And then I don't know what the figure would be, but I'd say about 80% of the other developments that are built for investors are built by probably 7 or 8 different developers who won't do this.
Yeah.
Unless they did it themselves, if that makes sense. Unless they decide
to management specifically and delivers on the back end of it for longer term management.
I still don't think there'll be an influx of properties coming on the market that are allowed to do it.
Yeah.
So I still believe for a good time yet that demand will be there in certain areas. And then the secret is, and what we're designed to do is then work out when that area's got to a limit where we think, okay, maybe it's not so there. When we see nightly rates slipping, it's about finding nightly rates going up. So I think it's going to be strong. And I still think that it's still going to be limited to investors who sort of understand it, but what we plan on doing is, and we're not trying to get on thousands of units per year doing this. It's still going to be limited in what we're doing, but I still think where we look for properties and where we source them and the developers we get on board will mean it becomes pretty fruitful for people who get involved with it. I can't see why it would change. I just can't stand it. I just think the world is changing. I think business is changing. I think people's, fluidity is changing. It is very different to what it was 20 years ago, and that's the aspect we want to do. And I think if we can get even more organised on the management side, where then costs come down, ultimately investors invest to make money, don't they? That's what they invest for, to secure a future. And I think this is a great future, and one that has got a lot of longevity.
Yeah, I think the market's got space to still kind of grow. I think it's still maturing as a particular part of the industry, if it were.
The package, yeah.
Yeah, and I think people's expectations in terms of what they can kind of get from it, and also locally people's expectations in terms of, is it going to work in, it works in, let's say, the larger cities for sure, but is it going to work in maybe the smaller towns or the smaller cities? But if you look at the right fundamentals, is location solid enough? Is the property okay? You will naturally have these kind of peaks and troughs. The market will kind of ebb, and you'll have locations where we've had it in our buy-to-let portfolio where it's been really strong with rentals, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you put it on the market, it's just quiet for a period of time. Maybe it's seasonal, maybe there's some kind of change in it. And I think to think that won't happen with any other strategy would be naive. And I think specifically within short-term let, if it's the right development, right location, the right place.
It comes back to the investment again, doesn't it? I try and say to people, right, okay, would you be happy if this was just running on an AST and the potential of the investment as it was?
Yeah.
Just take the short-term let as a bit of a cherry on the cake.
Yeah.
For what it can offer you. No one's forcing you to do it. It's not restricted. But remember, it's always about the foundation of that investment.
Yeah.
You know, what we want to say doesn't affect how you remortgage down the line, doesn't affect any of that. You know, it's if you think I like that, then the one thing that having the short-term option can do, it's certainly not a detriment to it. It can only be a positive, you know, so that's all it can be. So look at it as a basic single let, something like that, and then just think, right, okay, well, I've got an added bonus of maybe 2 or 3% more on my returns, you know, or extra few grand a year, whatever it may be, and that can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, agreed.